Welcome. My name is Simone Shendel, and I am Head of Events at Women in Mining UK. Thank you for joining us this afternoon for a very special Careers in the Mining Industry event. Before we start, I would like to run through a few of the usual housekeeping points. Please note, we are recording today's event. If you could be so kind to keep your mics on mute during the panel discussion, that would be greatly appreciated. Your cameras have been turned off, but please do feel free to switch them on at any time. And we will be taking questions from our audience via the chat button at the bottom of your screen. It now gives me great pleasure to introduce you to two members of the WIM UK Membership Committee, Dr. Holly Elliott and Hester Clarice, who are responsible for today's event. Dr. Holly Elliott first started working with the mining industry while investigating links between volcanism and lead zinc mineralization with Tech Ireland as part of her PhD at the University of Southampton. She then went to work at Camborne School of Mines as part of an EU-funded Horizon 2020 project called High Tech All Carb. Here, she worked on novel ways of exploring for rare earth element deposits within carbon-tight systems. And now Holly is a lecturer at the University of Derby, teaching ore deposit geology whilst volunteering on the Women in Mining UK Membership Committee. After completing a Bachelor of Science in Geology at the University of Leicester, Hester Clarice worked as an exploration geologist at Cornish Lithium. Hester is currently studying a Master's in Science in Subsurface Energy Systems at Heriot-Watt, focusing on the extraction of metal from geothermal brines. Thank you to all on the membership committee for volunteering your time and expertise to organize today's event. It gives me great pleasure to now hand over to Holly, who will be moderating both our panel discussions. Over to you, Holly.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that introduction, Amo. So thank you all of us for joining here today, both our panelists and our attendees. What I really want to say to you before we get going is that the aim of this panel is to showcase the huge range of careers that are available within the extractive industry, some of which you may not even know what that they existed or what they entail. So what we're going to do is we're going to start chatting with some representatives that we've got within our first panel, which are a few technical roles within the mining industry. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by allowing them to introduce themselves, what they do and what their job entails on an everyday basis. So Aoife, if I could get yourself to start, just unmute yourself and just let us know what you do on a daily basis and just introduce yourself and your role as a whole.
Hi everyone. So my role is essentially running exploration for Barrick in the Africa Middle East region. I've spent the last 20 years and well, more than 20 years now in the industry, predominantly in gold exploration. And I suppose over that time, my role has changed from more field-based to more office and strategy and planning-based. So, and again, it's changed during COVID with not as much travel to the field. But I do a lot of, at the moment, I do a lot of, well, meetings like everybody, but do a lot of program review, program planning, communication of our strategy and our plans to management, and quite a lot of data review as well, essentially on a day-to-day basis. Quite a lot of time in front of the computer these days, as opposed to quite a lot of time, banging rocks with hammers back in the day. So that's that's it. That's sort of the progress through an exploration geologist's career, I suppose. In one format, you could. In some ways, you have two choices in this side of the industry. You can stay more technical, or you can go more into management, and that the management route is basically the route I followed. So.
Excellent, thank you very much for that. So now I'm going to jump over and actually ask our only male of the panel. Ben, would you mind sharing with us what you do and what you do on a daily basis, please?
Yes, hello and welcome everyone. It's a pleasure to be the only man here. So thank you for inviting me. So I have actually changed roles as of 3 weeks ago. So I've gone from being a resource geologist, working for a mining consultancy, SRK, to staying within SRK, but working for the environmental, social and governance team, the ESG team. So beforehand, my previous life, I spent 12 years as a resource geologist. So a bit of what Aoife does, you know, some of the exploration, data management, but then geological modeling, estimation of resources, a lot of report writing and Excel-based stuff. But yeah, a lot of field trips as well, getting to know the rocks, getting out to various projects, various commodities around the world. Obviously, the best bit is traveling to see these amazing places. And then my new job is going to be really about environmental and social impact assessments and reviewing them, hopefully undertaking them, getting out into the field, and meeting the people and the environments who are affected by those projects. So two sides of the coin.
Excellent. Well, hopefully you can give some insight on both of those sides as we go through. So now I'm going to jump over to a slightly different role. Alex, would you mind explaining to everybody what you do and what your job role is, please?
Okay, what I'm doing environmental impact assessments and environmental audits. However, I started as an exploration geologist, worked for 6 years in that role, and then did a postmaster in environmental management. And started my own company in 2003, mainly working in Namibia and Southern Africa. And the nice thing is lots of traveling, and I get paid to get to nice places to see the world.
Oh, you can't want better than that, can you? Well, that's amazing. You start up your own company. That's fantastic. So now I'm going to jump over to Jo, if you don't mind. Could you explain to everybody what your job role entails?
Yeah. Thanks, Holly. And again, thank you for having me, and great to see so many attendees for today's event. My name's Jo Birch. I'm a senior mining hydrogeologist and project manager with Golder. I'm based in London here in the UK. I have an academic background, is undergraduate degree in environmental sciences, and then followed on with an MSc in hydrogeology. So my day-to-day role is all around the groundwater aspects of mine water management. So of my career to date, I've had 4 years as a geoenvironmental consultant, and then decided to move into mining, and that's where I've spent 8 really fascinating years. I'm also a member of Women in Mining UK, and I've been a volunteer on the Partnerships Committee since 2019.
Excellent. It's great to have a fellow Women in Mining representative on the panel. So thank you for joining us. And last but not least, we're going to head over to Hannah. Hannah, do you mind sharing with everybody what your job role entails?
No problem. Thank you, Holly. And yeah, welcome everyone. Yep. So I'm a senior lecturer in mining and exploration geology at the Camborne School of Mines down in Cornwall, which is part of the University of Exeter. In terms of my background, I'm basically through and through an academic, I have to say. So my sort of come at this is that I do lots of research projects and collaborative projects with various people in the mining industry on a range of commodities, but particularly focusing on platinum group elements, nickel, copper, and sometimes a bit of cobalt as well. I've also do a little bit of research in terms of mine safety as well, around gas outbursts and gases in underground mining environments as well. So in terms of day-to-day, my role is split almost 3 ways, between research, which I just mentioned, but also teaching, of course, and a bit of admin as well. And in terms of that teaching, that could be teaching anybody from an undergraduate through to a postgraduate, maybe an MSc student, and also PhD students of my own as well, and or postdocs. I have a range of people that I work with, and including that I teach. And that can be on ore deposit geology, it could be even things like field skills and mapping, through to geographic information systems and data management. And then of course there's a little bit of admin that goes with all of that as well. So that's me. Thanks, Holly.
Oh, I like that you put a little bit of admin that goes with that. Excellent. Thank you very much, everybody. So we've got a real range of careers here, which is absolutely amazing, a real range of experience. So because the point of this panel is to really enthuse people into your subject areas and your career areas, what I'm going to do is start off with the question, what's the most exciting point, or what's the most exciting event that has happened in your career so far? And I'm going to shake things up a little bit. I'm actually going to start off with Alex so far. And I know Alex has spent a lot of time in Namibia, so I'm hoping she's got some amazing stories to tell us about her exciting career.
know how exciting, but I mean, the exciting thing for me was actually be part of the high-tech Alcarb project, which was in Namibia and also happened in Czech Republic, Italy. I mean, traveling the world was really great. And I was mainly involved in Germany at the Kaiserstuhl, doing the water quality there, and or actually there are springs, and also making sure that the geologists, because it's a nature conservation area, that they didn't step over any prohibition things. And the other very exciting thing was when I got my first big EIA job, actually was for a uranium mine near Swakopmund. And I mean, it was just great. Yeah, suddenly you're up there in the big world.
Oh, that must have been really exciting. Thank you. Hannah, do you have a most exciting point within your career that you want to share?
Yeah, I was thinking about this for quite a while, about what is the most exciting bit, because I have to say it ranges quite a lot in terms of my own experiences. I've worked on lots of different types of research projects, for example. But I have to say one of the highlights for me was the opportunity to study as a postdoctoral fellow at the University of the Witwatersrand in Johannesburg. And just that sheer experience of being able to just get in the car basically and go and see some amazing world-class geology. For example, the Fredeford Dome just down the road, which I never dreamt I would actually go and be able to see in the flesh. And also in terms of what I was working on at the time, just being able to go around a whole bunch of sites and mine sites on the Bushveld complex. So for me, that was a massive highlight.
Excellent, that does sound amazing. Bushveld is definitely on my bucket list as a geologist, so I'm really jealous you got to see that. Jo, have you got an exciting point you want to share?
Similarly to Hannah, I did a bit of head scratching about this one. I think for me, I particularly enjoy working overseas on the field programs. And I know Ben and Aoife have mentioned the same thing. Just having the opportunity to spend prolonged periods of time living and working somewhere different and really immersing yourself in the project that you're working on and with the wider project team is so valuable. There's been one particular project for me in Greece where I spent a significant amount of time over the years, and it helped give me not just a more thorough understanding of the project site and being great technical learning, but it was an opportunity to develop strong working relationships and friendships with colleagues, clients, and even the family running the little hotel that we were staying in, and the family running the local bakery, for example. It was just such a rewarding experience, and really getting to see firsthand just how beneficial mining can be to the communities in which a project operates. So it was a real plus point, and getting to see that all over the world is a real high.
I completely agree with you there, completely. Now, Aoife, you're joining us from Canada, and you've had quite an exciting career so far. So could you really share with our attendees today, what really made you decide to go into a career in the mining industry? Can you give some insights on that?
So this is probably not the normal route into the mining industry, but it's a bit of a funny story. So I was slightly ambitious leaving school. I wanted to study microbiology and find the cure for cancer and HIV by the age of 35, which clearly didn't happen. But I'd never studied biology in university, so I took biology I'd never studied it in school. I took it in university. Absolutely hated it. Geology is the fourth of 4 subjects, and fell in love with it in the first lecture. So that sort of set me on the path to geology, but the course I was in was more focused on the university in Ireland that I attended had a lot of funding from the oil industry. Mining wasn't very big in Ireland then. So I left university thinking that mining was really boring, but ended up getting a job with BHP, and again, just falling in love with that. I was digging holes for soil samples and dragging copper wires around fields in Ireland, going, this is great. This is not office based. I love it. And then I realized I knew nothing about it, so I went and did a master's. And again, sort of lucky in my master's, I got my master's project in Ireland on smelling clays in Lisheen, which was more a mine geology thing, and I didn't really want to do it. And as luck would have it, the luck of the Irish, I suppose, I was walking past the course director's office one day, and he was on the phone, and he called out to me, he said, Aoife, do you want to go to Africa? And I was sort of like, when's my flight? But and it was basically 3 sets of funny, happy accidents that got me into the mining industry, in particular the expat mining industry. But once I was in it, I find it addictive. Like being an exploration geologist, you get to see parts of the world, and in a way, a different way to like normal travel or normal tourism. And it's like I tried to leave it once to go into engineering geology, which is also a great industry, but it pulled me back because it's just a phenomenal industry to be involved in. It's very cyclical, which I think all the students entering into, particularly from the exploration geology side, need to be aware of. And there are good times and bad times, and you have to ride out the first few down cycles, and then after that, you've got enough experience and you're about to be safe. But so yeah, I think my path was somewhat accidental and maybe not the normal, but once I was in it, there was no real going back. So
excellent, thanks for that. And I know quite a few stories that it's not been people's first point of choice, but once they're there, they absolutely love it.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you've managed to find that love, and your enthusiasm just shines through, which is excellent. And I know Ben didn't have quite the straightest path, and I know that you have kind of mixed around a bit. So would you mind sharing what really sort of made you decide heading into a career in the mining industry, and what's happened to you since then?
Yeah, so I did an ME-Sci. No one even knows what it is, like an MGeol in geology, 4-year kind of integrated masters. And in my thought, I was very much an environmental person, and I used to be called eco boy at school. I was very irritating, picking up rubbish and stuff. But that was always where my mind was going, until I had this really keen lecturer who just convinced me that shiny minerals were exciting, and ore deposit geology is just wow. There's shiny things and gold, and yeah, that's honestly what got me into it. The complete magpie, sparkly things, and yeah, they got me into it. And luckily I was in Cardiff, and SRK based in Cardiff, and I kind of bugged them enough to give me a job. But I always had this nagging suspicion that I was in the wrong kind of game. And as much as I enjoyed all the kind of geological work and geochemistry especially, I always felt like I was getting pulled towards the environmental side of things. Every project I did, I thought, well, that's great, but what are the impacts of this? And should I be on the other side of the fence? So that's what eventually got to me a few weeks ago. Well, it's been in the pipeline for a long time, but yeah, I transferred a few weeks ago, and it's a very different job, and I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm learning on the job. And the great thing about staying within one company is that they've given me the opportunity, without having to retrain, of doing something completely different that I'm not qualified for at all. Like Alex said, going to get environmental masters would have been a great idea, and maybe I will eventually. But right now it's all learning on the job, and there's loads of people in the office and around the world that can help me out. So yeah, it's definitely not a straight line. Like if you get into exploration geology, that's it for the rest of your life. A lot of people go through many different career changes, and a very common progression is exploration through resource geology to mining geology. And but then once you get to that side, you might want to go into geotech or into environmental. So yeah, never think it's one linear path. I think that's the key.
No, I completely agree with you there, and that's a really important point to put forwards, that you might not be at your eventual goal, and you might find something that you love even more, which is exactly what you've done. Yeah. So I think that's a really important point to actually portray to our applicants here. And Alex, heading on to another environmentalist. So Ben's the new environmentalist in the making, and you've been in environmental consultancy for quite a while now. Now, what made you apply that environmental impacts to the mining industry rather than another industry?
Okay, I started as an exploration geologist in Namibia, as people probably not know, but the population is under 3 million. So it's a very tiny community. Once you're in, you know your people. So after I studied, put on my MSc Geology, the Master of Environmental Management, I just went back, and people said, no, now you come not as a geologist, you do the EIAs for us. So it was very, very easy to get actually a foot into that. And also 2003, keep in mind, it was just the beginning that actually companies or mining companies were thinking about the environment. Before, I mean, I'm working at Washpina mine, which is now 53 years old. And I mean, at that stage when they started 69, it was like, oh, it's downhill, we put the tailings down there, and just the shortest way from the mine where you had space. But nobody looked for groundwater or potential impacts, groundwater contamination, dust. I mean, the village is built right next to the tailings dam, and I mean, if southwest winds, it goes straight into the village, and we have lead dust, which is not quite a big health hazard for the community. So, but I don't regret any of my career changes. I mean, I loved working as an exploration geologist, especially in Mozambique as well. I was running drilling campaigns and other things, but I really like to combine the mining and the environmental part. I'm working with so many. Actually, I mean, I don't have people employed in my company. If I have a big project, I'm getting specialists in. So, and you always meet new people and interesting people, which is great.
That's really interesting that you also went the same route as Ben, and you ended up in an area that you love, which is absolutely amazing. But I do note that a few of you did actually note that you did MSCs or that you did masters. So Hannah, being in an academic area and associated with mining, I really want to pose a question to you that I get a lot from my own students, which is, what is the importance of further study before you head into the mining industry? So, for example, could you suggest what the importance of doing a master's or a PhD might be, as opposed to heading straight in and jumping into the job market?
Yeah, cool. I think it would also be really interesting to hear anything that I'm about to say in the context of the other panelists as well, of course, because I think what I would be interested to hear what their opinions are of what I'm about to say, for example. I feel like most undergraduate degrees are typically more academically focused than most MScs, certainly within the UK. So it's important that that is the case, though. You know, at an undergraduate level, you need to know the nuts and bolts of how things work in order to be able to then use them in an applied sense. And so, with a few exceptions, and perhaps really where the applied side of geoscience, in terms of my background, comes in maybe in third or fourth year, with a few exceptions, there seems to be this academic focus on undergraduate. When you get to possibly an undergraduate fourth year, but more likely an MSc as a standalone course, that's where you start to focus in on applied skills that are industry applicable. And whether it be in exploration geology, mining geology, which, for example, I teach on here, or whether it be in some other kind of economic geology or environmental geoscience, for example, kind of course, they are core skills that are ready-made, hopefully, to give you some kind of awareness of what industry is all about and what the sort of day-to-day tasks or understanding of data are really needed. So I think that's the main difference between an undergraduate and an MSc. And I think that's why an MSc appeals to people. Sometimes lots of people go into an MSc immediately after undergraduate, and that's fine. I mean, I did that as well. And it depends on your own personal circumstances and what you enjoy doing. But then there are plenty of other people, as you've already heard from some of the panelists here, who have gone into some kind of industry role, or perhaps not even industry role, maybe it's working for a survey or something like that, then have made a decision that they want to change tack, they want to change the direction of their career, and have used an MSc as a kind of stepping stone in order to be able to do that, or to upskill in some way. When it comes to a PhD, I think we almost pop out the other side of that applied sense in most cases, by no means all. A PhD is where you start to carve out your own specialist niche in kind of research. It's the limit of knowledge. That should be where your PhD is sitting, and it will take time to get there. And you can, of course, devise a PhD or apply for an existing kind of PhD project that is already industry facing. So that could be a PhD that is working directly with a company on a specific project, or could be trying to tackle some kind of industry specific problem that's out there, but isn't necessarily working directly with a company, or it could be working with a range of companies. So there are some PhDs and depending on the institution as well, or the sort of researchers that those PhDs are linked with, that are industry focused. But I think it's fair to say that the majority of PhDs aren't necessarily industry focused. And as I say, it's definitely this kind of niche carving that you're going for when you're going for that level. And of course, in terms of entry, you can go directly from an undergraduate to a PhD. You can go from an undergraduate to an MSc, or you can go undergraduate, MSc, PhD, for example. And that's not even speaking about a master's by research. So yeah, it may have been a long-winded explanation, but I think we just have to keep in mind what the general goals of each degree are, and then map that onto, if it's your own career, you know, what are you going to get out of that? Is it time well spent, basically? Does it lead you somewhere you want to go?
No, I completely agree with you there, and I think that's valuable advice. As somebody who's been through both, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. But Joe, having been through, I think you said you went through a master's yourself before you went on. What do you think the value of that master's was to your job role and your experience so far?
Yeah, it's certainly been key for me. I'll sort of pick up on some of Hannah's points. I finished my undergraduate degree, so I did environmental earth sciences first, and when I had finished, I thought, right, that's it, I'm done, no more academia, I can't take any more. I want to get out and apply my skills in industry. Having done a year in industry as part of my undergrad degree, that really helped to give me some understanding about where I could go with a career, because I didn't particularly have a career plan in mind at that point. I really enjoyed my year in industry with a UK-based consultancy firm, and they sort of wonderfully offered me a permanent role once I finished my degree. So this was in 2008, when the world was heading into a bit of a bad place financially. So I thought, great, I'll get in and I'll pick up where I left off. And starting and getting a few years experience with them first really gave me a good grounding and a good insight into where I could specialize my broad environmental skills, because I'd learned everything from obviously some hydrogeology, sedimentology, geomorphology, climate change. It was a really diverse first degree. But it was the combination of hydrogeology and minerals planning that I got involved with in my first role that really interested me. And through that, I became acutely aware of the importance of water resource management in sustainable natural resource management. So how can we develop quarries and mines responsibly from a water management perspective? So that was the trigger for me, and I thought, okay, right, I know where I want to go now. And I took a year out to go and do my master's. So I had 3 years working experience under my belt, and for me the MSc at that point was a bit of a gap filling exercise in a way, because I had the framework, I knew where I was going, and it was just so much more useful for me. I think maybe just the way my brain's wired, but having that kind of structure and direction really meant that I feel I got the most out of the MSc course. As I was going through the MSc, I was fortunate to identify an opportunity with Golder, who are very active in the mining consulting space, and took a bit of a change of tack to move into the mining industry. So that was where I got my foot in the door there, and I've 8 years later, and still absolutely loving it.
That's excellent. And I do actually know quite a few people that have gone on that route. They've gone and got a bit of work experience, and then they've headed back in, Hester, to education, and then carried on. And it does seem to work that way, and I'm glad it works for you. Now, I've got a couple of minutes before we head on to a question and answer and a bit of a grilling of our panelists from the people who have joined us today. So does anybody have anything else that they'd like to ask from that question? Just unmute yourself and head in, maybe Aoife, Ben, or Alex.
Yeah, no, I just one thing I would say from that, when I went into my master's, like I said, my degree was more focused on petroleum geology. When I went into my master's with the year of digging holes and pulling wires around the field, I had a year's experience. I think it's key for choosing your master's as well, and it's a bit of luck, somewhat a bit of the luck of the draw. But in my master's, I was there was 11 people. There was 2 or 3 with no experience, no work experience, but there was at least 5 who had upwards to 8 years experience. And what I actually found was the combination of the academic approach, but the combined with the knowledge and the practical experience that those people brought to the course was actually really invaluable. And I think I learned an awful lot from both sides. And I was very lucky in that regard. But if you are considering MSCs, then it might not be a bad idea to ask about, the experience of the other candidates, because you will absolutely learn from your peers as well. So that's the only thing I'd add to that.
That's really interesting. Learning from experience is something that is so valuable to us and is underestimated. So thank you, Aoife. Anything else from either Alex or Ben before we head on to our question and answer?
I just want to say, I started totally different. I started in Germany, Geology, and there was no master course or anything. That was in the late 80s, beginning 90s. So it was a diploma, and that was a 6 to 7 year course you had to finish. If you drop out, you become just a normal, like Hiwi worker. And then afterwards, what I really liked was a postmaster in Cape Town. We were only 11 people, and from all different, we had 2 medical doctors, 1 biology, 1 lawyer, one economist, such a diversity of background, and we all did actually a master in environmental management. So that was for 1.5 years, which was really great. So I actually think postmasters are what everybody recommend if you have the possibility and the funding to do that.
Excellent. That sounds like a brilliant experience. And Ben, anything before we head over?
Yeah, I just think that it's just so competitive at the moment. The employment market. Getting a job is so hard that anything that puts you, above your peers is going to help you essentially, which is. It seems terrible, but everyone has a BSc now. So kind of how do you stand above? And it might not be a master's. It might be that you have gone and got, like I was talking to someone the other day who went and did a law course, kind of law conversion course, but specific to environmental law. And as a result of that, they've kind of got this, a bachelor's in geology, but also this qualification in law. And now they're thinking about going into something related to both. So it's not, I think it's not just you need a master's in mining geology or whatever it is. I think just having either experience in the field, if you can get out for 6 months, a year, 18 months, go and work your socks off in somewhere, some far-flung place, that might trump, having a master's, for example. I think at the moment, the last couple of people we employed happen to have PhDs just because they are very mineral specific and incorporated geological modeling into their actual PhDs, for example. But it's not like a tick box. Like if you've got a master's, if you haven't got a master's, you're not involved. So. But yeah, think about different kinds of experiences as well as masters. What I basically want to say.
Excellent. Well, I've really loved hearing those stories, and I think that's some really valuable advice to everybody who's listening at the moment. And while we've been chatting away, everybody's been putting up quite a lot of question and answers, so we're going to delve right into them. And panelists, if you want to jump in at any point, I'm not going to ask people. If you've got something to contribute, just jump in and head off. So I'm going to start with a first question from Ellen, who says that she's an aspiring exploration geologist, but she's currently finding it really difficult to find exploration jobs due to COVID. What would you recommend that they do in the meantime? Anybody fancy weighing in on that one?
So I suppose one question or one clarification is, if you're aspiring, does I can't remember her name. Sorry, I can't see the questions. I'm on an iPad. Okay, so if you're aspiring and you have no experience, it is very difficult during COVID, but I think doing additional studies or doing even just short courses, like there's like, for example, the Codes University in Tasmania, you can start getting yourself more applied experience through that, because they do run, in normal years, they run field trips and things like that. I think if you can get any sort of work that's in any way related to it, if it's data management, if it's, you know, even organizing files, but whatever it is, anything you can do that's related to the function that you ultimately want to get into, just put your hand up for it. Like, I ended up during one of the downturns working for free for 6 months. Now not everybody can do that. They have financial commitments. I was in a lucky position that I was able to do it, but in order to move out of exploration to more the mining finance side of things for a couple of years, because I wanted to learn more about that part of the industry, I ended up having to work for free for a bit, but it paid off in the end. So there's anything you can do, and the thing is, this is, as an exploration geo, this is practice for the future, because there will be periods in your life where you're just banging on doors looking for jobs, because with the cyclical nature of the industry, and you have to be persistent. Just be persistent, just break people's heads till they give you something. That would be my advice, because eventually they will find something for you to do. They do, but people are busy and they don't come back to it. If you want something, you have to go get it. Yeah.
I think it's a good time, given we're all online, to learn some new skills, some computer skills. Like, there's lots of software out there that you can download, get trial licenses for example. And there's some free software which is similar to stuff that would be used. Like, I'm thinking of QGIS, for example, is a free bit of open source software which is very similar to the way that other bits of commercial software would work. So if you can get your head around that kind of the processes involved, then that could be applied then, and you can put that on your CV as another thing that kind of gets you up the list.
That's valuable advice. Thank you very much. We're going to try and get through these questions. So we've got one from somebody who's got, Samia's got experience within the mining industry and as a production manager and an auditor. They're asking if it's possible to shift to M&A consultant in the mining industry. Anybody fancy weighing in on that question?
I would certainly say having experience from the other side of the fence, or in any way related to the industry, is valuable moving into that sort of role. Obviously, it's not my area of expertise, but it would certainly be of interest to potential companies. So certainly, just try and make contact and just have a conversation and think about how you can present your prior experience and your skills in a transferable way. Sometimes it's just all in the marketing and just having a good conversation with someone.
I agree with you there. Sometimes you've got to take the initiative yourself, haven't you? So heading on to another question. This is a question I get a lot as a lecturer from students. This is one from Esme, who's asking, how would you recommend finding work experience as a student?
I'll dive in here if I may. And actually, I think there's a link on to, in a way, Ellen's question, the first question here as well, in terms of what can you do in the meantime. If you're unable to get out and about, physically move around because of COVID, you can still, I think, offer some really useful work experience to companies rather than waiting for them to come to you in terms of an internship. Because there's all manner of desk-based studies, and reflecting both what Eva and Ben have said, all manner of desk-based studies that you could do on behalf of companies or with companies with digital data sets, and in the process upskill yourself and tick the box of work experience. In terms of how to actually find it, I don't know about you, Holly, but I tend to, if a certain person, a student, for example, is looking for work experience in an area that broadly overlaps with my own experiences, or that I have contacts, then encouraging, the person that knows that person to put you in touch and have a formal introduction is great. If you're not in a position where that existing link is there and that you can ask somebody to introduce you, another method might be to look up a range of companies or a range of places that you would like to find work experience, but not to go for a scattergun approach. Try and find a person, a contact at that company, a named contact, not info@companyname.com, a named contact, and send them a short introductory email, maybe attaching your CV if you feel comfortable in doing so. And try and tailor that contact to the company and or the individual that you're contacting. Because so often you see people do this scattergun approach to can I have some work experience, and it doesn't tell us anything about who they are, what they're interested in, what they want to get out of it. And it also kind of doesn't show a kind of tailoring. It doesn't show that commitment to having done the research about the company. And I think if you can demonstrate why you want to go to that company, why you want to do work experience with them, that's really, really important. And you need to convey that in any correspondence you have, whether it be email or LinkedIn or otherwise.
That personal research approach is so important when it comes to applications. It really is. I cannot stress that enough. Thanks for that, Hannah. So now this might be another one that you can weigh in on. We've got a question from Amber about the importance of accreditation. So they've asked about, she's interested in contamination, elemental concentrations, but not exactly sure which path to go down. She's torn between a master's at Camborne School of Mines and elsewhere. So the question is, what is the value of accreditation in relation to a school? And if they don't go for an accredited option, does that limit the options? And that also goes to everybody else who might be an accredited geologist or accredited profession as well. So that's open to everybody.
I'll start off in terms of the accreditation. This is something that actually we've been recently discussing in the context of mining geology, for example, a geoscience background, and an individual wanting to then cross over and become a mining engineer. And the method by which they wanted to do that was to go from an undergraduate degree in geology into an MSc in mining engineering. And that's fine, you can do that transition. And of course you can do an MSc in mining engineering, having not done an undergraduate in engineering, for example. But there is an accreditation limitation that comes with that, because you have a limited number of years of experience and study in engineering. We're only going for 1 year of mining engineering, for example. And so down the line, how you would get, for example, a chartership as a chartered engineer then is different. So that's slightly different from accreditation of the degree itself, but does have an impact on accreditation and your own chartership down the line. When it comes to degree accreditation, I'm almost certainly going to be biased in my answer here, but I think that accreditation is important, both, for example, in a geology background. The GeolSoc of London, for example, accredit of geoscience degrees and undergraduate and also to some extent to MSc. And the same applies to the IOM3, for example, in many of our MScs. I do think that recognition is quite important and gives a certain stamp, as it were, from an industry perspective in terms of where that course is coming from and how it's been taught over a long period of time in some cases as well. But as I say, I fully acknowledge I may be biased in my saying that.
Excellent, thanks for that, Hannah. I'm very quickly going to jump to fit in a last question, so apologies to everybody whose questions we haven't managed to get this in. So this question is mostly aimed at Alex and Ben. This is from Michelle. She's talking about the geo-environmental sector, and they're asking about what are the most important skills, or what's the most important experience that's valued within that area in order to boost their chances of employment.
May I come in here? I think it's, but you really have to be able to, I mean, if you work in a mine or as an engineer, a geologist, you actually have to try to get the message over to the layman. So you have to describe it in terms that everybody can understand it, but also not water it down. So, I mean, it's like a fine line. So it's actually, we have lots of glossaries where we explain things to people that they know what we're actually writing in. And then also public meetings. I mean, I'm coming from a different, from a totally different part of the world, so Africa. We have lots of people who don't speak good English. So, I mean, we usually have meetings in Afrikaans or in their local ethnic language, and to make lots of also posters explaining what we're doing, just visualizing it. So, and I think the other thing what I did also, no, sorry, I stopped here.
That's all right. Very quickly, Ben, do you want to weigh in on that? And then we are going to have to end, I'm afraid.
Oh, I just don't have enough experience to comment really yet. So
okay, that's fair enough. Absolutely fair. That's honest. I love the honesty. All right. Well, I think there's been some really exciting stories that have been shared there. And thank you very much to our panelists for sort of giving over your enthusiasm to everybody who's joined us today within your sectors. So what we're going to do now is we're actually going to switch over panels, and we're going to be heading to a different range of careers that we're going to be talking about in panel number 2. So thank you very much to everybody from panel number 1. Now we're going to head over, and as we switch, we are going to drop in a quick poll question, just so that we can get your thoughts and views on a couple of issues. So Emone, if you would like to jump onto that, and then we're going to bring in panel number 2, which are going to be some of the different and not really non-technical, because every job is technical within the mining industry, but a different range of careers for you for panel number 2. So thank you very much.
Right, wonderful, Holly. This is absolutely a fabulous discussion here, and I apologize. We have so many people on the line today that some of you are actually dropping off and having to log back on, which is actually is great, because it means that this is such an important topic for all of us to be discussing. So with that, I'm going to bring up poll number 1, and you'll see the poll right now. And I'll give you 30 seconds to answer. Are you considering further education or diving straight into the job market? And I can see the answers coming up on my screen, and I'll share them with you in a second. This is quite interesting. Interesting. Are you considering further education or diving straight into the job market? Right, I'm going to end the poll, and I'm going to share the results. There you go.
So that's really interesting after the discussion we've had, and I wonder if anybody has been swayed one way or the other by the discussion. That would be very interesting. Should have asked it before and after.
Yes, exactly. Holly, would you like me to bring up question 2, or should we wait for when we're done with panel number 2?
Let's leave it until after, I
Perfect.
think. Excellent. Thank you very much for that.
What I'm going to ask now is if you'll see our lovely screenshot here of who will be on the next panel. If I could get all the panelists on this panel to put your screens on, to put your videos on, that would be greatly appreciated.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. So for those of you who are just joining us for this second panel, what the aim of today's panel session is to really get an idea across and showcase all of the different careers that are available to you within the mining industry or the extractive industry, because sometimes we just don't know the breadth of the different roles that are running along behind the surface. So today what we're going to be doing, we've had panel number 1, which is some of the more technical roles. Now we're going to head over to panel number 2, and we've got another range of exciting speakers to introduce themselves to you now. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump straight in, and I'm actually going to start by asking Rob. Rob, would you mind unmuting yourself and just really introduce yourself, your job role, and what you do on a day-to-day basis, because I know it's very different from the careers that we've just heard about.
Great, thanks, Holly. Yeah, thanks for inviting me to talk here. Yeah, so my name's Robert Pell. I'm founder and director of Minvaro, and Minvaro is a life cycle assessment consultancy and technology company. So we provide data, environmental performance data for projects in different stages of development. And my day-to-day role is quite varied. It's very data intensive. It's almost like a form of accounting, but accounting for a load of environmental parameters. But that suits me. I quite enjoy that, and it's quite exciting as well, because the day-to-day role includes working with a lot of innovative companies trying to make these raw materials for the low carbon economy with minimal environmental impact, and we can help support that. So we really enjoy doing that.
Excellent, thanks for that. And it's a very, very different role from all of the geology and the environmental side of things that we've just looked at. Kaylee, I'm going to jump in with you now, because you're actually one of those behind the scenes jobs that everybody uses but doesn't quite think about so much. So Kaylee, maybe you could share with us what you do.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Kaylee Cooper. I'm Senior Product Specialist for Micromine based in Johannesburg, South Africa. And basically my company develops and sells 3D geological modeling software and mine planning software as well. So we're implemented across hundreds of sites across the globe with thousands of users. So really day to day, I get to deal with exploration geologists, production geologists, mining engineers, surveyors, you name it. I get to deal with them. I'm a geologist by profession. So it's a bit easier to talk to them rather than a sales guy. But my day-to-day activities are really just, the biggest role is actually training. So it's training existing and new users on how to use the software more efficiently. With that, if they want to do something fancy with a wireframe or a block model, I help them out on the support side of things as well. And then with consulting, time to time, I'll go sit in an operation and basically sit there and just get them to go through the workflows of how they're using Micromine, how they can use it efficiently from their day to day. So yeah, tons of different places all over Africa, different commodities, and yeah.
Excellent, thank you. And for those of you who haven't come across Micromine yet, if you head into the mining world, you will. So very important part of the sector. Rebecca, can you join us and just share with us what you do on a day-to-day role? What's your job?
Thanks, Holly. Good evening, everyone. So I work for De Beers Global Siteholder Sales, which is a diamond aggregation and sorting and selling company. And I'm based in Botswana. I deal in relationship management with government, with stakeholders, and I basically focus on making sure that, we retain our license to operate by making sure that working with our team in corporate affairs, a very dynamic team, a group of amazing people, we make sure that the De Beers brand is experienced, is felt, and is sustained in Botswana by the government and the community. So that's me.
Excellent. So exciting that you're joining us from Botswana today. So thank you very much. Jake, would you mind weighing in here and just sharing your job role?
Yeah, of course. Thank you for inviting me along. It's a pleasure to be here. So I actually started as a geologist in Mozambique with a company called Gemfields. I realized that there was a lot to the industry that I actually didn't understand. So figured I'd take a bit of a transition in my career and shifted over to the finance industry, focused on mining and metals. So I joined Elliott, and essentially my role is valuing mining companies. So we do that for a range of reasons, for transactions or for disputes or impairment audit related issues. And I assist our team on a day-to-day basis doing technical due diligence, valuations, chatting to mining companies all over the world. But pre-COVID, an important part of that was traveling. And that's the reason why I got into mining, essentially, was because I love getting out to some of these places which are the sort of places which you don't go as a regular tourist. But being on those mines, and you have to consider both the technical and the financial aspects of some of these industries. So yeah, that's what I do on a day-to-day basis.
Excellent, thank you for that. I couldn't agree more. Geologists really do get to see a completely different side of any country they visit. So thank you for that. And last but not least, Bianca, would you mind just weighing in and letting everybody know what you do for a job role?
Yes, of course. Thanks, Holly. So I'm a natural resources and energy lawyer, which means I work in oil and gas, renewable, and mining. And my job consists of anything you can expect from a corporate lawyer. So reading, reviewing, drafting contracts, doing lots of due diligence in terms of transactional work, and answering a lot of legal questions. For instance, can we assign our mining permits, or how do we acquire a mine in Zimbabwe? So we kind of do a bit of international work and on the legal aspect of it.
Excellent, thank you very much. Now, there are some roles which are that you are doing that are general across industry. So what I really want to see is how quite a few of you got into the role that you're currently in. So Rebecca, would you mind starting off and just really saying what was the path you took to get to the role that you're currently in, looking at in a diamond company over in Botswana?
Thanks. So I've had a bit of a love-hate relationship with the diamond industry, actually. I started off as a business consultant with Accenture, And then I joined De Beers Exploration, but it wasn't sexy enough for me. So I ran away from, from mining and I joined the UN. I really wanted to see and make a change in the world. You know, I had a very romantic sentiment about the UN, working with former presidents, etc. But the allure of the diamond industry called me back, because in Botswana, diamond mining and sales has really moved our country from being one of the poorest in the world to one of the fastest growing economies in the world. So I went back into De Beers when it relocated from London to Botswana. And I worked, you know, in various roles at an entry level. But then I had an aha moment one day when I had to support our team relocating from London. And I realized that crisis management, people relations, PR, and everything that comes with experiences and activations was my happy place. So I decided that I wanted to be in PR. So one day, sitting in my little property management office in De Beers, I heard through the grapevine that the VP of Corporate Affairs was in the building from London. So, you know, put on my heels, got my determination, walked into his office and said, "Hello, my name is Rebecca. And one day I am going to be working in your department." So he looked at me with a bit of fear, but intrigue. And he's like, "Okay, nice to meet you." And I turned around and walked away. And 2 years later, I managed to get a job in PR. So that's basically my career path. And now, many, many years later, I'm still in corporate affairs and loving every moment of it. So that's why I said a bit of a love-hate sort of relationship.
Oh, that's absolutely incredible. Thank you. That was a brilliant story. Now, Rob, I know that you have taken a slightly unconventional jump into owning your own company. So can you let everybody know how you've made that jump to do that?
Yeah, of course. It's definitely not going to top Rebecca's story. That was fantastic. But yeah, so my background was in earth science. I did geology as an undergraduate degree at University of Birmingham a few years back. And then I actually moved into journalism. So I was assistant editor for International Mining for 3 years. And that was great because I got to see different mine sites around the world and see how different technology was being applied at different projects. And then there was a great opportunity to conduct or carry out a PhD at Camborne School of Mines, University of Exeter. And that was really focused on, well, the title was quite broad. It was just looking at responsible sourcing of rare earths. And then through that PhD, came across this approach called life cycle assessment. And it was so useful for my research and a really powerful way to quantify environmental impacts. And I saw towards the end of my PhD that it had been underutilized really in the mining and metals world. And so, you know, with a lot of support from the University of Exeter and my supervisors, Professor Francis Wall and Dr. Zhao Yuyan, they encouraged me to try and explore the commercial potential. And then, so straight after my PhD, formed Minviro, and that was in late, I think, 2019. So not too long ago, but it feels like a long time ago. And since then, just really been growing the company. But you know, all the experiences that I gained during my PhD have really been essential for this. Yeah, so it's quite an unconventional route, but yeah, it's been enjoyable.
Excellent. That's brilliant that you managed to get that, and the support that you've had along the way is amazing. Oh, congratulations. Now, Bianca, you could be a lawyer for any sector. Why did you choose the mining industry in which to have this?
That's a very interesting question. I get it all the time. Why mining and not why tech or any other industry? Well, to be fair, I mean, I guess it started with my dad being quite involved, but on the financial side, so investing in mining companies. So at dinner table, I would hear about mining and kind of the mining jargons and stories. So I got kind of this interest and curiosity, but I knew right from the start that I still wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to do corporate law. I wanted to do international work. And a bit like Rebecca, you think international work, so it's a bit sexier than mining, but it actually, like mining, I do so much international work. So when I started taking some classes in mining and understanding that we could travel the world with our mining expertise, and especially as a lawyer. So I come from Canada, I moved to the UK, And in the UK, we do a lot of work with Australia and Africa. So it's a very international career as a mining lawyer. So I definitely enjoy it. So that's how it started, I guess. Thanks, Dad.
Well, yeah, any sort of connection. And it's great that you love it. Now, Kaylee, you said you started off as a geologist. So what really brought you across into the software side of things?
Well, luckily, they still want geologists. So that's a completely different pathway for geologists to actually take. When I started out in my working career leaving varsity, I had very little exposure to geological software. I think maybe even, at varsity, any field work was like the 10 meters of core that I logged in the lab, and that was basically it. So I didn't really know what geologists could do. For me, it was either exploration or mining. And I landed going up the mining route. So with that, through networking, being asked to go to another consultancy company, they were looking for junior geologists. They wanted us to get involved in the modeling side of things. And that's when I really got my first sort of taste for software, and it just happened to be Micromine, where we did a full exploration program, drilling, to take that raw data and actually build this 3D model of what is expected underground. Was just, it's such an amazing experience to go through that whole entire process. So it's something that I also just sort of stumbled my way into, but it's fantastic because all the skills that I've picked up along the years have been necessary for that.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's such an important part of the mining industry software that, it's great that you made that jump across. And Jake, what really sort of directed your path within the mining industry?
Well, I think I did an undergraduate in geology quite a few years back. And from then, I always really knew that I wanted to get into the mining industry. I loved everything about the mining industry at that point and tried to do as much as I could to get into it. At the time, that was about 6 months of internships. I had 4 internships over 6 months where I was just trying to get any sort of experience to make myself stand out so that I could get some full-time employment. One of those was actually unpaid as well. So I think that relates to one of the questions on the first panel. Just trying to make yourself stand out is quite important. So I ended up getting into exploration and into operations working in East Africa and loved it. I had some great experiences, met some great people, and it became sort of a lifestyle rather than a job. But as I mentioned earlier, I realized that there's a lot more to the industry than just being on operations and just being geologist, and decided that I'd take a bit of a leap of faith, a bit of diversification in my career, and try and understand the finance side. And that's where I got to today.
Excellent. I think that is such an important point. What makes people stand out within the industry? And actually, I'm going to stick with that. And I'm head across to, let's go with Rob. What do you think really makes people stand out within the industry? Because we do get this a lot with students. They want to know what skills they should have, what sort of experience under their belt. What do you think makes somebody stand out within this industry?
So I think it's attitude and confidence to reach out and engage and try and support a company in like actually doing the research and seeing what they're trying to achieve and aligning with their values. If we've had some people approach Minviro who have looked to get in support from either carrying out an internship or being involved with projects. And that's a really good way to get experience that will then give extra value for them to come into the company in the future. So yeah, I would just, obviously education is very important and having that experience, but I think you can't beat sort of being active and engaged with the companies that you want to work with.
So it comes down to that personal research again. Excellent. Rebecca, do you have any thoughts on what really makes people stand out within your industry?
Yes, I think I'll lean a bit towards what Jake said, and actually a lot of the other panelists. I think if you're a graduate and you've just finished school, I think the best way to do it is to find that personal connection. So whether it's you know, looking for people on LinkedIn and connecting with them and writing them a quick note, researching, whether it's actually making sure that you stay current, you know, LinkedIn Learning, there's so many opportunities for you to enhance your skill set while you're looking for a role. And I think a number of other speakers have spoken about being bold and really going for what you want. If you're already starting your career, then I would say the best way to stand out is on a quarterly basis, have a board meeting with yourself. Like put a mirror on the table, sit across from yourself and say, okay, for these 3 months, what value have I brought to this business? What have I learned? What networks have I made? Because your network is your net worth. And have I really given enough to the company to sustain my salary? If any of those questions answer is no, you need to do something to stand out, because it means that you're starting to get into a bit of a, you know, a generalist sort of area. So I think those would be my two big tips for the two different groups.
That's incredible advice. And I can just imagine you doing that, have a mirror sat in front of you, telling yourself off. So that's perfect. Thank you. And Kaylee, obviously you said that in the software and the technician world, that geology is important, but what other aspects would you really look for to see that somebody stood out within the software world?
Well, I think nowadays it's brushing up those needed skills. Something as simple as Excel. I know it sounds very, very basic, but for a student coming out of varsity, yes, equals 1 + 1 is 2, but actually go and try and do those free online courses to brush up your Excel skills. Get involved in a bit of Python scripting, even if it's just the basics of hello world. Do something along those lines, because I think that's where, especially in my industry, a lot of the software is moving towards that. It's incorporating a lot of this Python scripting, and things are getting a lot more expression-based, a lot more advanced, and that can really give you the edge. I mean, currently now when we're looking for individuals to join our company, that's specifically something that we are looking for. So definitely those type of skills. You touch on them at varsity, but really take the initiative and just really push yourself and go find those free courses, and just kind of stand out a bit in that way.
That's excellent advice, because that coding, it's a real skill that you do have to learn, and Python is such a big part of it. That's excellent advice. Thank you very much.
Yeah, like I have to admit, I'm kind of still trying to catch up to that. You know, I never caught on that bandwagon early enough. So even myself, I'm trying to pick up those skills. So it's definitely worth something focusing on.
Yeah, and constant developing of yourself, that is never a bad thing. No, excellent, thank you. Right, we're going to head across now, and I know, Jake, you've had quite a varied career so far, as you told us just now. So could you perhaps, what was the best moment? What's the most exciting moment that you've had in that varied career you've had?
Well, I think there's been a bit of a common theme throughout this panelist discussion, and I think it's travel. Being on the ground in operations, as I was for a while, you're exposed to just a completely different lifestyle, with the communities around you, with the people you meet, and the cultures. And that's one of my fondest memories. Although I still don't do it now, I really treasure those memories that I had there. And I learned so much in such a short space of time. I said, it becomes a lifestyle. It's not just a day job. So for me, that aspect was really fascinating. But now the role I have now, I still get to travel. And although you don't spend sort of months, years at a time on a site, there's still a real fascination about traveling to these remote places, meeting these very different communities and cultures and way of doing operations and building and constructing mines. I think that for me is the most fascinating part of what I do, is that you get to see such a diversified, such a huge range of cultures and operations.
Yeah, that's very insightful. I completely agree there. There is such a range of aspects of being an international geologist that are really attractive. So thank you for that. Now, Bianca, I'm going to give you a slightly different question along the same lines. So if you were talking to an up-and-coming lawyer who hadn't chosen a sector yet, how would you really sell mining as a good sector for a lawyer to be in? What's the exciting parts that you would really drive home to get them across into the mining world?
So yeah, very good question. I think there's different aspects. So as a lawyer, we tend to like technical aspects, like being able to read regulation, act, draft, review contracts. And I think the mining field is very technical. So you do need to know very well the mining sector and also the law that comes into it and the regulation. So I think as a lawyer, it's very exciting. I think there's a lot of interesting work. As I said, there's interesting work around the world. So we do a lot of international work. Often I did a lot of local work as well, which was as well so much interesting because, as Jake said, there's different assets, there's different types of mines, there's different, I can work with junior mining companies as I can work with super majors, and the work is kind of diverse on that aspect. And sometimes it might be a work with lithium, and then so you get to know a bit more about the client and the lithium industry, and then sometimes it's gold. So now we're acquiring gold assets, and you need to know about these. So I find it very fascinating because it keeps changing. It keeps you on your toes as a lawyer, like to keep digging on the regulation, especially when you do work abroad. You do need to have that interface with local lawyers, local practice. So I find it very interesting. So there's much more I could say, but please reach out if you have any more questions on how exciting the mining industry is for a lawyer.
Oh, that's excellent. Thank you. And the variety, it really is a very attractive part of the mining industry. Okay, so what I'm going to ask now is, it was a very hot topic in the questions. So just to head off any questions and answers that might cover this, we're going to have a talk about, again, one of those questions which comes up all the time when students are looking at a new job within the mining sector. We're going to talk about the importance of further education as opposed to going straight into the job employment industry for your roles. So we talked about the geological roles and the environmental roles, but what about you? What is the importance? So I'm going to start off with Kaylee this time. What's the importance of further education versus work experience and jobs for the area that you're in?
It was very interesting listening to panel one. There was a definite push to, go do those further studies. It's worth doing. I find in my line of work, yes, it's always good to develop your skills, but not necessarily in the academic space. Go do those courses on stockpile management. Go do a PMP, so project management accreditation. Go do Dr. Isabel Clark's practical geostats course. I mean, those are the sort of the aspects that I use on a day-to-day basis. And that for me is more important. For me to go and get a master's or anything like that, if I don't use that experience, it's just going to land up being a piece of paper in a frame on my wall. So for my side, definitely the more sort of practical courses are definitely worth doing, but not so much the academic.
That's really interesting to hear a different role having a completely different viewpoint. So that's really, really valuable. Thank you, Kaylee. Rebecca, have you got any real insight into this? So you have a completely different role within PR. What's your view on this?
So I have a slightly different view because a couple of years ago, I decided to throw caution to the wind and do an MSc actually with the University of Derby. And being an A student all my life, when I did my first assignment, the script came back and I had gotten 38%. And I remember looking at the script and turning it around and saying, maybe the lecturer, wrote the number backwards, because how can I get 38%? And I was completely distraught. And he came and said, for certain masters and PhDs, our focus is not on you giving the right or wrong answer. We are trying to get your mind to a point where you can reason, where you can rationalize, where you can problem solve and come up with solutions. So to borrow from Kaylee, in that aspect, 1 + 1 is not 2. 1 + 1 is whatever you can justify it to be. So it really blew my mind because all throughout my life, there was only one answer. So I would say that depending on the field that you're trying to get into, a master's or a PhD can increase your knowledge base. It can help you to develop certain skills that may be useful in your day-to-day. Because I did a master's in strategy, an MSc in strategy, I'm always thinking about, why am I doing this? What is the end game? What value am I getting? And that changed after I got my master's. Before then, I was just like, let's get it done. Let's get it done. So I think it is contextual. Yeah.
No, that's been really interesting to hear from that different viewpoint. And so that was talking about masters and things like that. So Rob, I know you've got a PhD from Exeter University. How do you think that has helped you within your current role?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing now without the PhD, because it was really developing these methodologies which allowed me to start this business. So, you know, I think if you're trying to, I suppose, create a new market or enter a new market, you need to do that research to a certain extent. You know, I mean, that's the feeling I have. But you know, I think I completely agree with Kaylee and Rebecca that it's completely context dependent. If you're looking for a role that doesn't necessarily need the masters, if it needs more practical qualifications, then I would definitely suggest that. Like, we wouldn't have any within Minviro. We would certainly hire people if they didn't have the qualifications, if they could show that they'd gone out and you know, worked on maybe some more unofficial qualifications and have some sort of demos of things that they've developed themselves. So yeah, I think it's always important to sort of step back and look what you're trying to achieve, what kind of role you want, and see if those sort of further qualifications such as a master's are required for that position. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. So it was really, really interesting to hear your contrast of what Hannah said in the last panel compared to the PhDs really helped you get to where you are. So that's excellent. Now, Bianca, obviously you have probably a slightly different set of qualifications to the rest of us who are more geology based. What's your opinion on further education versus experience?
So of course, as a lawyer, you don't need a master and a PhD, and it's really rare on practice that people do get those extra qualifications. It's usually for teaching or academia. I did a master because I wanted to learn more about mining. So I did my master in mining law. And of course, those extra qualifications were great for my career, because my undergrad and my law degree there were no mining at all. I did an undergrad in political science, so no mining related. So it did help me. But that being said, I don't think I can still do the job I'm doing without a master degree. I think there's other ways to also get those qualifications, the knowledge about the mining industry. There's so many courses or certificate that you can do just to add to the knowledge in the mining industry. So I would say it's very a personal choice. I was interested in pursuing that, writing and doing a bit more research, but it's very a personal choice because there's so many other options out there.
That's really interesting to see it from the other side of things as well. So thank you very much for that, Bianca. Now, Jake, I'm going to start you off on a new question. So the job role that you have been in, if you had somebody who was up and coming, who was going into a similar job role to yourself, what would be the top 3 tips that you would give to them in order to get them to where you are today?
Yeah, it's a good question. First of all, perseverance. It can be very frustrating and very demotivating with job applications and hitting HR walls all the time. So yeah, one, perseverance, and secondly, just trying to speak to a real person instead of a HR wall and getting a bounce back. Thank you for your application. Much of the experiences that I've had and much of the opportunities that have been open to me have been through building a network, speaking to people, and even if they haven't got anything directly to offer, just asking if they've got a network that they can put me in touch with. And that's really helped me over my career. So that would definitely be an important part. But thirdly, I would say that any experience is good experience. It doesn't matter in what discipline it's in. In fact, my first job, they didn't even ask about my undergraduate. They asked about an internship that I had, where I put that my internship was looking at some geophysics. And the exploration manager called me and said, actually, we're looking for somebody to head up our geophysics program. And I mean, I worked on a geophysics project. I was basically over 2 months. I didn't really do anything technical. But that got the attention of somebody that was looking at my CV. So I would say that any experience is good experience, whether it's on the technical side or whether it's on the finance side. And that network's really important because you'll learn a lot from the people that you speak to.
That's a common theme that we've got coming through here, that networking and how important that is. Now, having a slightly different technical role, Kaylee, what would you suggest the 3 main points that you would suggest for somebody getting to where you are today?
Definitely on my side would be experience in public speaking. I mean, 5 years ago, I was terrified to even answer a phone, but nowadays I can stand in front of a large group and chat. Although it is such a horrible thing to do, whenever you get the chance to publicly speak in front of people, do it. It's awkward, it's horrible, but every time you do it, it gets easier and easier. One of the other things I've spoken about is simple things like being able to write a formal document. So a lot of the times when you're getting into CPRs or competent persons report, being able to structure a document well, you know, these type of templates you can find online and you can study through them. And then, yeah, back to Excel and Python scripting. Like I said, I find nowadays that's such a valuable skill to have, especially in the software industry where software, it kind of all acts the same, all kind of works the same. So if you know one, you can kind of figure your way out around the others. So definitely a bit more upskilling in that side would be definitely beneficial.
Wow, that's really interesting that come through. So those transferable skills and that confidence in writing and communicating, that's really something that we try and instill in students as they go through their undergraduate. So it's really great that you put that forward. Thank you very much. Now, Rebecca, you gave us that amazing analogy of having a board meeting with yourself. But what main 3 points would you suggest to get somebody where you are today? What tips and hints would you give to somebody?
Yes, I think first and foremost, you have to believe in yourself. You know, you need to embrace the fact that there is no one else like you in the entire world. So you may not be perfect, but you are the perfect version of you. I think that is a key thing, especially for women going into the mining industry. Secondly, I would say we need to sit down and actually develop a stakeholder map, because the networking that Jake spoke to and a lot of other speakers have spoken to and Robert has spoken about is really important, because as women, most of the time, we tend to confuse networking with friendships. And that is a really key error that we make early on when we're going into a company. So right now, if you want to get into, example, the diamond industry, who are the trendsetters? Who are the game changers? Who are the people who are speaking at different conferences? Write them down, follow them on Twitter, connect to them on LinkedIn, read their articles, so that when you get the opportunity to be in an interview, you can stand out. So that is the second thing. And then the last thing that I would say is embrace the fact that as women and as people in general, we are quintessential chameleons. And by that, I mean, just like a chameleon, in every instance, you can bring the best version of yourself to the table. So if you're in an interview and you're in an interview in a diamond company such as De Beers, speak to De Beers, do the research. If you are in a company where, as Bianca said, where you're doing mining law, make sure that when you go in there, you bring that knowledge about legalese, etc. You know, legalese is a whole different language, but yeah, you bring that to the table. You know, change and adapt yourself. I think one of the speakers spoke about, look at your resume when you're actually applying or looking for a promotion, and tweak it. Be like a chameleon, tweak it for the people or the industry or the company that you're trying to get into. So those would be my top 3 tips.
Thank you, Rebecca. That's really invaluable. I mean, it's so important to personalize CVs, statements, recommendation letters, it's really important to be personal. And for those of you who aren't on LinkedIn, lots of internships and things like that are actually advertised on LinkedIn. So I do suggest getting yourself an account and setting up a bit of a network for those of you who aren't. Oh, that's absolutely excellent. We've heard so many really interesting things there. But as we've been chatting away, there are lots of question and answers coming up, so we're going to delve over into that. And actually the very first one is directed straight at you, Rob. Molly has asked, because you have a bit more of a desk-based career, they're very interested in what sort of things you do on a day-to-day basis, and other companies that are very similar to yours, although I'm not sure there are many companies similar to yours.
Yeah, so it's day-to-day work is desk-based, and it has been over the last year, obviously because of COVID. But you know, the reality is some parts of our work involves visiting mine sites or going to conferences. So you know, we're not tied to the desk all year round. But in a day-to-day role, it's a lot of, as I mentioned, it's a lot of speaking to clients, collecting data, doing a whole. You need to be able to understand the whole mining sector and refinery processes, mineral processing. You have to have a good understanding of the whole value chain rather than just a very specific knowledge to be able to understand the data qualities and everything and be able to model the environmental performance. Yeah, so it's quite varied, and a lot of report writing as well. So yeah, to fully support the statements that, you know, you need to make sure all these baseline skills that need to be up to a level to be able to add value to companies like ours.
Thank you very much, Rob. That was very detailed. And I hope that answers your question. So the next question is actually directed at Jake. So Jake, we have a question asking, what assisted your transition from mining into finance, or rather doing finance within the mining industry, and how would you relate that process to other fields like a technical field, for example?
So my transition, I mean, I wouldn't have been able to move into finance without doing a master's. I think that relates to some of the questions that were around earlier. But I did a master's in metals and energy finance, which was critical for me to get into this side of the industry. So that was quite important. Was there any other parts of that question that I didn't quite catch?
No, so it's really just what assisted your transition between the two different sectors within the mining industry.
Yeah, so it was, I think my technical knowledge or having some experience in operations was a big help, because the department I work for, they actually require people to go to site and to sort of challenge management and talk through some very technical aspects. So that was quite important for me. But yeah, fundamentally, I wouldn't have been able to transition into finance without taking the master's.
Excellent, thank you very much for that. So we've got a general question that's open to everybody, if anybody fancies weighing in. They're asking about the importance of having a first-class degree, so an importance of having a grade associated with your degree, because sometimes it's hard to get a balance between getting experience and getting good grades, and you know, just that balance as a student, trying to get everything in. So what is the importance of having a first-class degree as opposed to a slightly lower degree? Anybody want to weigh in on this one? Silence.
Yeah, I can jump in again.
Thanks, Jake.
So I think it depends on what you want to go into. I see a lot of PhDs that require a first-class degree to transition into that role. Rob might be able to comment on that sort of transition, but for going into a technical role, I don't think anybody's actually questioned or asked for what grade I'd got. Obviously, the minimum that for most applications is a 2-1, and I think everybody who's transitioning into the industry should be at least aiming for that. But I haven't had a job application that's turned me away because I haven't got a first.
That's really interesting. Thank you, Jake. And somebody's actually commented that you've had a very interesting career path. So thank you. Does anybody want to weigh in on that question, or shall I move on to the next one? No? Okay, so we've got a question that's directed at Kaylee, a very short question, possibly. They're asking for you to rename the geostats course that you mentioned earlier.
I don't know what the exact name is, but it's something along the lines of practical geostatistics. But Dr. Isabel Clark conducts that. She's well-renowned in the mining industry. She's been around for absolute ages. She's a fantastic woman, such a character. She travels between UK and South Africa, well, before COVID, to host these workshops, and they sell out pretty quickly. Everybody wants to hop on board. So if you're going to do any geostats course, try and aim for that one. They are a little pricey, but it's definitely worth the outcome if possible.
All right, thank you. And before you mute yourself again, you've got another question. So there's somebody who is currently considering doing an Agile or a Scrum certification versus PMP. Now, I don't know what that is, but I'm pretty sure that you probably would. So they're asking, what would you advise?
I think Agile and Scrum, yeah, maybe somebody can correct me if I do answer incorrectly, but it's more, it's not a project management side of thing, but it's a methodology focus. So planning on, yeah, so training how to analyze and, you know, thought processes and that. At the end of the day, development is development. If you get the opportunity to further your development in any way, depending on what you want to do, it's definitely worth taking. A PMP was just an example, but if you find that this is something that is attractive to you, that you're going to have its full attention, then go for it. There's no harm in actually getting that and then deciding later, okay, in a couple of years, you want to maybe go for that PMP or you want to go for those other courses. So at the end of the day, depends on what you want to do, and any development is going to be worth it. It's going to put you ahead of the next person.
Exactly, self-development and getting a top edge in the industry. Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Kaylee. So we've got a question from Samia asking about a topic for their MSc program. So this is open to anybody, but suggestions for topics in M&A in an MSc program. Has anybody got any thoughts on that? No.
Well, I might be able to comment more from a finance side, but I guess it depends on what the MSc is. If it's for a taught MSc, then often you'll be screened into the sort of theses which the masters would recommend you to do. I'm not sure on a research side if there is such a research topic as M&A in the mining industry. I assume there is. I just wouldn't know what sort of universities would offer that sort of expertise. But definitely in the taught masters that I did, the work that we were doing, and my thesis was actually focused on valuing mining companies. So that's probably pretty similar to the question that's being asked about M&A. I mean, valuations is pretty similar, but then applying that to M&A is probably something which would more come down to applying your education into your experience.
Thank you very much, Jake. Now that's it. That's all our questions. So I think, oh, actually, no, Aoife, yes, you can still jump in with a last question if you are quick and you type it as I'm talking. But really, we've had so many comments about how inspiring you've all been and how you've all been amazing speakers, and you've given some absolutely amazing advice. So really, thank you all very much for giving your experience and giving your valuable opinions. I think it's been really helpful this afternoon. So the last question that's coming in is, how will you like to see diversity and inclusion efforts represented within profiles? So obviously this is close to women in mining's hearts. So has anybody got any suggestions on how you'd like to see diversity and inclusion included within somebody's profile? Looks like Rebecca wants to weigh in on this one.
Yes, I think I'll just say two things about that. I think diversity and inclusion right now is a really big topic, and a lot of companies, including De Beers, have put it in their sort of values and in the ethos of the company. And it's really gaining a lot of ground because everybody's realizing that supporting different views from different people, from different backgrounds, helps with innovation. Look at what has happened with COVID. The whole world has been turned on its head. And those companies who have a varied workforce have been able to diversify and, you know, retain their value chains, retain their profitability, and some have even become a lot more profitable. So I think the world is ready now for a lot more inclusion and celebrating a lot of diversity. The one thing I will say, though, to women who are going into the mining industry, particularly the diamond mining industry, it isn't a bed of roses, you know. It's there are days when, you know, you'll be sitting in a boardroom and everybody will be like, wow, you're so innovative. And other days where you're in the bathroom bawling your eyes out because, you know, you just can't get an Excel sheet to balance up or, you know, something like that. But what I will say is that if you go into it feeling that you are going to be as multifaceted as a diamond, you know, you're going to be malleable, you're going to be open to feedback, open to criticism, but you're going to embrace the fact that coming out of it, you will be the best in the industry, then you will make it. So that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you, Rebecca, and thank you for ending on such an inspirational note. That's all that we've got time for now. So really, just to wrap up from myself, is had some absolutely amazing stories, some invaluable advice, and I would just like to thank you from the bottom of my heart, all of the panelists today, for joining us. I think you've given so much advice, so much feedback, and some real inspiration to those of you who have joined us today. Lots of nice comments on the chat if you want to read through those yourselves. So thank you all very much. And I'm going to hand over to Hester and Eamon just to wrap up this panel discussion. So thank you all very much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Holly, and thank you to all our speakers. So let's finish off, before I hand over to Hester, let's finish off with that second poll question, which I'm just about to launch. You should see that come up on your screen. I'll give you 30 seconds. So which sector interests you the most? Exploration, mining, environmental consultation, academia, or hydrogeology? And obviously I can see the results coming in. Oh, this is interesting.
Mining, come on.
We like that, Rebecca. Right, here we go. I'm going to share this with all of you.
And you got
there
your
you go, Rebecca. Mining tops it, right, Holly?
Definitely, couldn't agree more.
Wonderful. Well, I'm going to hand over to Hester now. She has a few words to say, but from all of us at Women in Mining, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. An amazing panel. Holly, you did an absolutely brilliant job. So thank you so much for that. If this is your first time joining one of our events, Women in Mining UK is a volunteer-run non-profit organisation which promotes the employment, retention and progress of women within the mining industry. Everyone is welcome to become a member of WIM UK, regardless of your gender or where you're located in the world. So just go over to our website and you can join us there. Our membership is free. And lastly, just a note on our next event you might be interested in. On April 8th, we're hosting a panel discussion with Imperial College London about the mining industry and why it's such a rewarding career choice. So we'd love to see you there as well. You can find the event details and where to register on our website. And just a final thank you so much to everyone on the panel and WIM UK for hosting this event.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for joining us.